I'm really going to invest in a microphone for this thing because I know my voice goes up and down. I've watched the podcast back to see if I'm getting interruptions anymore or anything like that. But because I know the sound is not where it should be, but I'm working on that one step at a time. Welcome everybody. It's now officially game week for the 2024 New Orleans Saints. I really can't believe it. I tried watching some of that Hall of Fame game, and I watched maybe about 4 series, and then kind of turned it off. I was really watching for the new kickoff rules. Did you watch any of the game at all?
No, sir. No, sir.
I know you were at the beach, so.
Yeah, no, I didn't even peek, didn't watch a single play, not a single highlight. When we watched TV on vacation, it was all Olympic coverage, and that was it. I mean, yeah, and you know my background, track, volleyball, all that stuff. I mean, yeah, the Summer Olympics, that's my time to shine. So yeah, when we did watch TV, it was all Olympics.
Well, I tried watching the new kickoff stuff because I wanted to see how this works. And honestly, it's a little strange. Nobody moves really until the guy gets the ball, and the ball's kind of bouncing around a little bit. He's got this zone for about 20 yards where he can kind of fumble with the ball, and then once he touches it, then all hell breaks loose. But it kind of gives them good field position. You have a good kick returner, and this is, again, the thing with Rashid Shaheed, and we'll talk about a couple other guys who's going to be turning heads in camp. But Rashid Shaheed is somebody who should really take advantage of these new rules because he can get up ahead of steam, and if he breaks containment or they line it up right, he's going to score. Because I watched the Bears, and I don't remember who else was playing. I think it was – I honestly can't remember because that's how forgettable the game was. But they were returning to almost midfield every time. Yeah. You're getting it. You have that landing zone to about the 20. So if you scoop it up at the 20 and then you start running, if you get 10 yards, you're at the 30. You get 15 yards on a return, you're at the 40, 35, 40. So, you're getting a good head start. So either teams are going to have to kick it out of bounds or kick it out of the end zone, I should say, not kick it out of bounds, kick it out of the end zone, prevent any kind of return. Or if you have a kicker that doesn't have a very strong leg, you're conceding almost midfield, unless you have really good special teams. So I think you're going to see a lot more starters out there, which means when it comes time to picking your rosters, who's going to make the team as a special teams guy only? We've always talked about, because the Saints have put such a heavy emphasis on special teams, what players on the roster are really a special teams guy. JT Gray comes to mind. Obviously the long snapper and the punter and place kicker. But, who else? We've always looked at linebackers as maybe the guy that's going to be, a special teams only guy. Maybe a wide receiver, maybe a tight end, one of those kind of guys. But now you're looking at, Rashid Shaheed, we mentioned already, but you're looking at guys, probably cornerbacks and defensive backs who will do both. So I was kind of hoping you would get a chance to look at it, but for Saints fans who did not watch the game, that watch the Olympics, that's what I would want to watch this Saturday night when the Saints play the Cardinals. How do they do this? I don't think you can see Rashid Shaheed Saturday night. But Tipton, that receiver, I think is he out of Yale?
He is, yeah.
Yeah. He's been turning a lot of heads. So I'm curious to see what happens Do they put him at kick returns? What do they try and do with a guy like him? What do they do with with a JT Gray? Do they try and find another JT Gray? That's going to be the interesting part for me.
Yeah. It's one of the things that I'd be watching for too. And I'll be honest with you, when I made the conscious decision not to even tune into the Hall of Fame game, I completely mentally checked out of the kickoff rule. I didn't even wouldn't have thought about it probably until someone asked me on a show, or I tuned into the game on Saturday. But as soon as they changed the rule, that was my first thought. Second thought. First thought was anybody that has a Rashid Shaheed is going to be extremely beneficial field position, field position and game breaking threat wise. But the other thought was all the linebackers and tight ends that have made the team in the past, just off special teams ability, is that going to fall by the wayside because you want faster guys now? You want more athletic guys. Guys like and you mentioned JT Gray, but Hugo Amadi is another guy that comes to mind. He was a little bit of a defensive factor for the Saints last year. Amadi was, but he primarily made this team because of his athleticism on special teams. The Saints brought back Marquez Callaway. We know that Callaway can play special teams, both as a gunner and as a backup returner. He's been fairly effective both ways. Mason Tipton, who's turned a lot of heads in practice with his receiving ability. But realistically, Mason's probably going to be a fourth receiver at best, but more likely a fifth or sixth receiver. In other words, a guy that has to make this roster based off of special teams. And what other guys are gonna pop out? A couple years ago, Isaac Yiadom made this team based off of special teams. Is there another Isaac Yiadom in the Saints secondary? We know that a lot of those jobs we assume are spoken for at cornerback and safety. But what if they're not? What if, I remember a handful of years ago, I think I was still working for Canal Street Chronicles, and every single 53-man roster projection, I didn't even have JT Gray listed in the players to watch. Yeah. And then he makes the roster, and I was like, why did they keep this guy? Well, I mean, we've seen since, but is there another guy that's going to turn some heads special teams wise that way? And I think that's a very important factor to look at, not only in Saturday's game against Arizona, but all three preseason games.
Absolutely, because I tried making a 53-man roster, and there's a reason why a lot of reporters aren't doing it. Because you really don't know where they're going to go heavy. Are they going to go heavy on offensive line? We would think so. But that's a roster spot that could be used for special teams, whereas you might have earlier used the fat guys on the first line. But now the line is right there, right near that 20, that landing zone. You want fast guys. Because if they get to the second level, you got to have guys that can turn around and run plays down. So that's not offensive line. That's going to be defensive backs. So I think they go heavy on linebackers and defensive backs this time, which does affect the depth of your offensive line. I want to stay positive tonight, but we got to talk about the injuries. The Saints have had a lengthy list of injuries. I've seen a lot of injuries all over training camps, but Saints have allowed a lengthy list of injuries. A lot of them seem like they are soft tissue kind of injuries, hamstrings, bruised calves, that kind of stuff. You're not seeing. I got to phrase this properly. You're not seeing guys with significant injuries. They're going to miss significant time, like knee injuries or back injuries or things like that. So that's a plus. That's a plus compared to what we've seen in the past. In the past, it's been, guys out for the season with significant knee injuries, guys injured who miss a lot of time, get put on a PUP list, and maybe they might be active by week 9, week 8. We're not seeing those kind of injuries. So, and the reason why I'm bringing this up, linebacker, for example, what we were just talking about, you're seeing guys like Orgy, DeMarco Jackson, those guys all getting opportunities to play, to get significant snaps while Demario Davis is out with a hamstring. Pete Werner, I think he had a shoulder
Yeah.
problem and he's been out. So Gay has been able to step in and he looks really, really good. So you think that helps them make these decisions? These guys missing?
Ultimately, I think it does. As long as, and I agree with you, it feels like the tweaks that players like Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Demario Davis, Pete Werner, the tweaks that they have, the Saints are only keeping them out of practice and out of action more for precautionary measures. And obviously that's the intelligent thing to do. These guys are not only going to make your team, they're going to be key starters. So why should you push anything? But if there's a positive to it, other than the fact that they don't seem to be serious injuries, it does give guys like Mason Tipton, Anthony Orji, DeMarco Jackson. It gives guys like that a chance to earn their spot on the team. More with more than just garbage time reps in the fourth quarter of a preseason game. So these guys all have every opportunity, in their lap to try to turn these coaches' heads. And I don't want to say cement a spot because a game, preseason game hasn't even been played yet, but certainly weasel their way into the conversation that all these coaches have. And this, all these position coaches, and coordinators, every single day after practice, they're talking about these players. And you're right. Not many writers are making 53-man roster projections. I've made one early in the like late spring, early summer, and we'll probably do another before Saturday. But while a lot of us aren't making our projections, these guys are doing so nearly every single day. Because it's not just. I don't know how many fans don't realize this. It's not just at cut down day or in years past when there will be 2 or 3 cut down days. It's not just at that time where the coaches sit down and say, okay, we need to make a roster decision. No, these roster decisions are taking place every single day. And that's why a guy like a Mason Tipton that's making an impression every single day in practice, that's why it's important to be consistent rather than just make a couple of plays here and there that wow the fans or media in attendance and then have us all scratching our heads. Why didn't they keep so-and-so on the roster?
Right.
They made this play or that play. Now, these coaches know what these players are doing every single play, every single drill. So, the more action that Orji, DeMarco, Tipton, the rest of those guys are getting, the better it's going to be for them. And ultimately, the easier it's going to be for the coaches to make these decisions.
Absolutely. Yeah. I can't agree with you anymore because we saw just before we were out last week, obviously, but we saw just before they started with the training camp in the pads. Come on, man. The back, Jake Hayner had a skin condition where he actually had surgery the other day. And Spencer Rattler has had the opportunity to play with the 2s and the 3s on Monday. And he looked good. And we're seeing a lot of good things out of him, which is a very promising stat. So obviously that's something to watch in preseason. But these injuries, these people missing, gives the coaches lots of opportunities to look at these guys. Next week they go to San Francisco to scrimmage against them before they play next Sunday. Once again, you're probably going to see a lot of guys that are people that they want to see against another team play a lot. like a Jake Hayner, like a Spencer Rattler, not just Derek Carr. Some of these running backs, let's see what they can do against the 49ers. So a lot of people complain about the injuries. I get that. It's always concerning because you're going to miss, guys miss, but it's giving people the opportunity to show something, and it makes it harder on the coaches. It's not just that one catch that all the fans saw because it was a deep bomb on the sideline. It's, this guy is not an Emmanuel Butler. He's not an Andy Tanner. He's somebody who's going to be doing something every week. And that's what they're trying to judge. That's what they're trying to see. So even though you haven't seen much of camp, is there anybody that surprised you that's having a good camp, and anybody that's kind of disappointed you that not having a good camp?
Yeah, a few players, and like I told you before we went on the air. I've been watching footage. I haven't picked on. I haven't written a lot of articles because I was on vacation and for other shall we call them personal reasons. But yeah, I mean there are a few guys that stand out. Everybody's camp standout right now is Mason Tipton. We've talked about him a few times already. I'm not ready to anoint him a roster spot yet, but he certainly seems strongly headed in that direction. Him staying at wide receiver for a minute. The fact that Tipton is turning heads. A.T. Perry got off to a slow start, but he seems to be coming along now. Bub Means and Cedric Wilson, two guys that I thought were slam dunks for this roster. They're missing some time with injuries. Again, they don't seem to be serious injuries, but these guys aren't guaranteed roster spots. So they need to be out on the field. And the fact that they're not, the fact that Kendre Miller has not been out on the field, that's what I find disappointing. I mean, these guys, if there's one concern that a lot of us had about the Saints' skill positions coming into this season, I mean, we knew Olave, Shaheed, Kamara, they're all talented. Jawan, they're all talented. We wondered if there was going to be any depth there. Anything to give Clint Kubiak additional options, for multiple formations and things like that. And so far, we haven't seen that. I like what Tipton's shown, and I still stand by my guns that I think Cedric Wilson is going to be a good signing, but we haven't seen it yet. And everybody's darling since OTAs, Dallin Holker, continues to play very well. I'll be interested to see how he plays, come Saturday and beyond. You talked about Willie Gay already. That's a signing that that I loved. The second they made. In fact, I predicted it before they even made it. But Anthony Orji has been turning some heads as well. It's going to be tough for Orji to make this linebacker spot, because you have to figure that 3 of the probable 5 linebacker spots are already taken up. But Orji is going to really push DeMarco Jackson, the rookie Jalen Ford, and 2 veterans who I think people aren't talking about enough. Kalike Hudson, who's looked really good in pass coverage, and Monty Rice, who has a lot of starting experience in this league. The jam at linebacker is probably a good problem to have, because you and I have been concerned about linebacker depth now for years. So Orji is another guy that's standing out to me. And Chase Young. Chase Young's been playing really, really well. The first day or two, I was cautioning people. I'm like, okay, yeah, he has, and it's great to see him out there in the first place. But he's doing this a lot against a lot of second-string offensive linemen. Well, since then, he's continued to do it against Fuaga. I almost said Pete Penning, and the first-team offense. So that you gotta love to see. Isaiah Foskey, I don't know about you, Alan, and what footage you've seen. Isaiah Foskey still looks lost out there. He's done okay on pass rush reps. But against the run, he looks like a JV high school player playing against a high school state championship team. He looks completely lost and completely overwhelmed out there. And that's a disappointment to me because I think Foskey's got a lot of physical ability.
Well, yeah, and I've been seeing that. A lot of people have been saying, okay, Chase Young looks good, but look who he's going up against. But Chase Young if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, he was a top 10 pick. I think he was number 2 overall. His problem has always been health wise. And he looks like a guy who is ready to play for a contract, which is what you wanted out of him. You wanted somebody hungry. And CBS Sports was out there, and CBS, they did a report, and it's on the internet and on YouTube. The guy, they had like 3 or 4 errors in the graphics alone. And so when you're making fundamental mistakes, I mean, they said the Saints record last year was 7-10, which it wasn't. It was 9-8. That was the record 2 years ago. They had a couple other errors they had put on their little crawl on the bottom. Like, did you guys do any research at all before you came in and did this report? But they did say this defense looks faster. Yeah. This defense looks like they're going to be a force. It's a lot of hitters. They were really frustrating the Saints offense. So again, that's something I want to see. Is it a case of the Saints offense just being bad? Or is it a case of, no, these guys are pretty damn good? Nathan Shepard is having a great camp. Brzee has been nicked up a little bit. And people have been kind of concerned because they see Brzee listed in the depth chart doesn't mean anything. No. But the depth chart they put out, they have Brzee as number 2. Kalen Saunders is number 1. They think that Kalen Saunders, if they rotate, Saunders is probably going to be in there for obvious running downs. Brzee will be in there for obvious passing downs. And then you just rotate these guys to keep people fresh for the fourth quarter. Carl Granderson is having an outstanding camp, showing that he's not a one-hit wonder, not a guy who, okay, I got paid, now I don't give a damn. He is just somebody that is growing up, so much so that Cam Jordan has become kind of like the player coach on the field. Yeah. They were showing a lot of footage of Cam Jordan walking around, coaching up Carl Granderson, coaching up some of these defensive linemen, and then going to the offensive line and coaching up Fuaga, coaching up Penning, these kind of things. So to me, that's really interesting because maybe that's what Cam's future is right now, that he comes in on certain situations, but he's kind of that player coach kind of person he's going to have his opportunities, but he's more or less the guy who's going to come around talking to people and say, hey, look, this is what they're doing. This is what's going on. So I'm really curious to see how this plays out. Obviously, I don't think he's going to play at all in the preseason.
No.
I don't think he's going to play. I mean, he won't even really participate in the scrimmage with the 49ers. I think this is the young guys. They're talking about the young guys, getting this team younger. These are the guys that go out there and they're going to be doing this stuff. So, to me, I just find that interesting, the way this team is acting right now. Some of the guys I'm disappointed in, you mentioned Kendre Miller. Allen's been calling him out. Allen called him out the first day, talking about being a professional, talking about, you need to take care of your body. You can't make the club from the tub kind of thing. I'm really surprised the Saints haven't brought a running back in to kind of push Miller a little bit more. Like, I think Dalvin Cook is still out there.
He is. So is Kareem Hunt.
Yeah. I'm surprised the Saints haven't brought one of those guys in just for a quote-unquote look-see. I think maybe when they get back to New Orleans, you might see those guys showing up if Miller's not out there yet, because we're, 11 full practices. We're on day 12 of camp. They were off today, but 11 full practices, and Miller hasn't been out there at all, except for a little bit of a hamstring. I think that's a huge problem. A.T. Perry not stepping up on day one and coming out there fighting for that third job. That's disappointing. Guys that we've been talking about all season that, okay, this is a guy that we think is going to make a step forward. This is a guy we think is going to make a step forward. Those guys aren't producing, but we're seeing some of the new faces producing. Jordan Howden apparently is having a very good camp. I have not seen any reports other than the fact that he's having a good camp, which probably could explain why the Saints are just, we're not pulling the trigger on a safety. The fans are screaming, we need a safety. We need a veteran safety because you're insane if you're going to go with Howden, Abram, and Honey Badger. That's not a good threesome. We've beaten this thing up to death, but how are you reacting to the fact that Howden just seems to be there and seems to be doing okay?
He does seem to be doing okay. And they did ultimately bring in Will Harris after the draft, and I love Harris's fit for this defense. And I know Harris has had a couple moments, but we do believe that Jordan Howden is going to get the start against Arizona on Saturday. And it still feels like that not only is this his job to lose the starting spot alongside Tyrann Mathieu, but it almost feels like the coaches have anointed him as the starter since the day they released Marcus May. And I'm not saying I don't like Jordan Howden. I thought he did some nice things as a rookie. But as with most rookies, there were a lot of ups and downs. And I don't know that I'm going to feel comfortable just handing the job over to a second-year player who has shown me ups and downs without having a fallback plan. And I like Will Harris. I like the signing. And like I said, I like the fit in Dennis Allen's defense. He's certainly familiar with the type of scheme that the DA likes to run. But I don't consider Will Harris a real solid fallback plan. And Jonathan Abram, I don't know what the hell the team sees in him. He wouldn't make the roster of at least half of these NFL teams. Yet he's probably going to be a New Orleans Saint come week one of the regular season. So I'm going to be watching Jordan Howden really closely through these 3 preseason games, and particularly in the scrimmage against the 49ers.
Yeah, I really want to see how these guys. I think Abram can play the run.
Yeah,
it's his pass coverage that really concerns me. And of course, Marshawn Lattimore has not been practicing. He does have a more significant soft tissue issue. But I also think the Saints are kind of like, that's fine. We know what you can do. We want Kool-Aid McKinstry to get more reps. We want to see some of these other defensive backs get some reps. Because again, when we started the show, we're talking about special teams and the differences in special teams. If you go heavy on defensive backs, these are some guys that you need to look at because they're going to be guys that you're going to be relying on for depth. Can you find another Isaac Giddum? Can you find I can't think of the guy's name right now. He's now with the Jets. Harden. No.
Millette?
Hardy.
Oh, yeah, Justin Hardy, yeah.
Justin Hardy. Yeah, can you find another Justin Hardy? Can you find those kind of guys that, that will be your depth? That could be linebacker / safety. Paulson Adebo has gotten nicked up, and it seems that's a little more significant as well. So does that open the door more for Alontae Taylor to do more on the outside? They've been he's been embracing the idea of being an inside guy, which last year it seemed like he really wasn't. So, I mean, he is having a better camp than he had last year. but I'm just kind of curious how this is going to play out.
Yeah, I am too. And I like Alante. Um, and yeah, he has been having a good camp, as you pointed out. Uh, I certainly do not believe, nor should they take any unnecessary chances with either Lattimore or Adebo. I mean, you saw Adebo 2 years ago. He
Mm-hmm.
carried that ankle injury into the regular season, and he was lousy for that first for that first third or so of the year.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want that with either Marshawn, who's had injury issues the last 2 years anyway, or Adebo. And we've said all offseason, especially after they drafted Kool-Aid McKinstry, man, this is the best foursome of cornerbacks in the National Football League, and I still truly believe that.
Mm-hmm.
So no, you're not going to see Adebo, you're not going to see Lattimore, nor should you. But it does beg the question. Alante Taylor can be an outside cornerback. If he's getting all his reps on the outside because Adebo or Lattimore cannot play, then does that take away from the reps you need him to, the repetitions that you need him to have out of the slot, or moving him around in sort of a hybrid cornerback safety role, like we think he could work his way into during the course of the year? That's gonna be a factor to watch closely. But I am anxious to see Kool-Aid McKinstry in action for sure.
I am too. Switching over to offense now. The offensive line's been a mess. They've had some injuries. I want to stay positive, so let's just start from the most positive news out of there. Fuaga's having a good camp.
Yes.
He is showing that he is a guy that you probably can count on to start on week 1. He's going to make rookie mistakes. He is going to be the left tackle, the starting left tackle. That's what he's drafted to be, and it looks like he's going to fulfill that that need. Penning has worked with Armstead this offseason. He is very much a project. He has his good moments and he has his bad moments. Playing on the right side, you can at least help him with a tight end. So he's not going to get Carr killed. Cesar Ruiz seems to be having a solid camp, not a spectacular one, but he's not regressing. So I guess that's a plus. But the left guard, they wanted to give it to Salvadori. He's gotten hurt, but even when he was there, he wasn't really holding on to that job. So now they're starting to rotate all kinds of people in to see who can play that spot. I mean, how do you feel about this offensive line?
I'm very concerned about it. I see the same thing you've seen about Fuaga. I do expect him to make mistakes, especially at left tackle, a position he's relatively unfamiliar with. But I mean, he's got such good upper body power and technique, and his feet are spectacular. I think that I love this kid. I think he's going to be a great offensive lineman. Seeing the same thing that you see out of Penning. That's a kid that, if you're going to have most of your healthy starters play just a series, Penning's got to stay in for at least a quarter, if not a whole half. Because that was my complaint about him the last 2 years, is that you want him to be your left tackle. He's inexperienced. He's making the jump from FCS to NFL. Yet you're treating him like a seasoned starter. I thought that was a mistake from day one, and they cannot repeat that mistake with Trevor Penning, especially because he's playing a new position. Ruiz, McCoy. You're looking for bounce back years from them, but left guard is a big concern of mine too. I knew there was going to be a close competition between Saldivari, who I agree they want him to have that job, but Saldivari, Shane Lemieux, Lucas Patrick. But the concerning thing is none of those guys have really stepped up consistently to take control of the competition. And yeah, my point is, and I know that this was the point you were making too, the earlier these guys win their competition, the better off the whole offensive line is going to be for it, because then you can start to establish continuity. The more you have to rotate guys because either guys aren't
Mm-hmm.
healthy enough or they just haven't been consistent enough, the less continuity that there is going to be there. And you're already, this is left guard, so you're already talking about a rookie on the outside, left tackle. So you need to establish that continuity as much as possible and as soon as possible. And I'm now coming around to believing that Lucas Patrick is ultimately going to be the starter. But again, one of these guys, whether it's Patrick, Saul DeVary, Shane Lemieux, one of these guys really has to start separating themselves from the other two.
Do you think they make a trade or a move for a left guard? I mean, not that there's much out there.
Right.
I mean,
and I don't. I don't know what's out there. I don't know what's out there. I certainly think it's possible. The game against the Cardinals, and then the following week when you once you have your scrimmages, and then preseason game against the 49ers out of the way, if you're gonna make a move, you're probably not gonna make it before any of that, because you brought these guys in, Lemieux, Patrick, they're established veteran starters. Saul DeVary, you want to have the job. I mean, that's why you traded to draft him 2 years ago in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to give these guys every benefit of the doubt and every opportunity. But if you're going into the third preseason game and you don't have a pretty good idea at who your starter is, as the old saying goes, if you haven't made up your mind who the starter is, then you don't have a starter.
Yeah. The offensive line, and that's what, again, for people who want to know what to watch next week or Saturday night, and then also next week, that's what you need to watch. Let's see what that offensive line, let's see what the interior of that offensive line does. You're going to see a lot of people rotating in and out of that guard spot. You're going to see a lot of rotation on the offensive line. I think Flogger plays for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he is going to try and build that chemistry. And that's one of the things that I kind of wanted to talk about this too, but Dennis Allen is a different coach this year than he has been in previous years. He called out Miller. He has been a lot more vocal, a lot more assertive, a lot more of a head coach as opposed to the substitute teacher coach.
Mm-hmm.
That was his reputation. That doesn't mean he's improved his game plans. It doesn't mean he's improved his game-making decisions or in-game decisions. But he is certainly going out there and at least trying to be like, okay, if I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail doing this my way. And I'm going to show that I should be a head coach in the National Football League. And the players are responding to it. So it's not just, he's pretending to be Sean Payton or he's pretending to be a head coach. The players see it as legitimate, and they have been craving this.
Yeah.
They have been wanting this kind of head coach because that's what they're used to with Sean Payton.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not saying that this is going to turn a new leaf and suddenly now he's going to make better decisions and all these other wonderful things are going to happen and he's found himself. But he's at least, just like he did this offseason, he looked at the problems and said, I'm part of the problem. I need to change who I am out there with these guys. And he's trying to do it. So I'm going to give him credit for that.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens come the regular season, but I'm at least giving him credit for realizing that the way you've been coaching isn't the way you're going to win football games. One of the other positive things that we have seen in camp, these offensive coaches that he's brought in, Clint Kubiak, these offensive line coaches, I tell you what, these receiver coaches, they're all over these guys. And These practices are crisp. These practices are very well structured. The players, all they ever talk about is how much teaching's going on,
Mm-hmm.
how much hands-on coaching they're getting that they weren't getting before. And it's not, I don't want to say like the guys they had before were bums, but they've gotten comfortable because those teams, those coaches have been together for so long that they just kind of, like what Drew does, like what we did in such and such a game. You don't have those people here. So they're not grasping the assumptions. This is a whole new playbook. Everyone's learning it together. Everyone's starting from ground zero, and they're teaching this stuff. They're constantly teaching, and they're constantly on these guys, and these practices are like, boom, we're going to this. Boom, we're going to this. Boom, we're going to this. And when something goes wrong, he's calling them all out, which we didn't see. And that was one of the things we talked about a lot last year, the accountability problem. Players were not held accountable. Coaches were not on the players, demanding more. It seems like that's what we're seeing now. Are you getting that same impression?
100%. And that's the main thing about the overall practices that I've seen that's jumped out to me is how crisp they are and how involved all the coaches are.
Mm-hmm.
Look, Pete Carmichael, God bless him. He's going to have his rightful spot in the Saints Hall of Fame one day. And I don't think anybody should ever dispute what he's done for the organization. But what you said about him just being one, he wasn't the only one, just being one of the ones that just felt like they were comfortable. There's, I don't believe this personally, but I understand the theory. There's a theory that if a coach sticks around too long, the message gets stale. Mm-hmm. And you did kind of feel that way with Pete Carmichael and a lot of these other coaches, Dennis Allen included. And the players, almost to a T, almost to a man, they love Dennis Allen as a person. The defensive players that played for him absolutely will run through a wall for him. But there was something missing last year. And whether it's going to be vocalized or not, I think Dennis Allen at least should feel like he's coaching for his job. Mm-hmm. Because after year one, Dennis says, okay, I didn't have the defensive coaches that I wanted to. We weren't all on the same page. Okay, he gets a new defensive staff. I didn't have the quarterback that I really wanted to. Okay, he gets his handpicked quarterback. Then after year two, I have a problem with the record-setting franchise record-setting wide receiver, gone out the door. Didn't really like what the offensive coaches did. A lot of people felt like he threw those offensive coaches under the bus, not taking any self-accountability, and maybe there was a little bit to that. But nevertheless, he has his new offensive staff, and I'm with you. I love Kubiak from the start. He was on my short list. Him and Zach Robinson. So I love what Clint and Rick Dennison. Not enough people are talking about Rick Dennison, man, but he's a good ass coach. And the young wide receiver coach, the one you alluded to, is getting on these guys. Mm-hmm. Attention to detail is something that we have seen lacking. Even in Sean Payton's last year or two, we kind of pointed out, without coming right out and saying it, that the detail doesn't seem to be there like it used to be. Dennis Allen has, if this doesn't work this year, Dennis Allen has nobody else to blame but the man looking back at him in the mirror. And that tends to change a person. That tends to make you a little, harden your edges a little bit. And both you and I have said over and over and over again since DA was hired, hey, look, nobody's asking you to be Sean Payton. That's not your personality, and you shouldn't try to be what you're not. Mm-hmm. However, you shouldn't be an easy pushover either. I kind of chuckled at the substitute teacher reference that you made, but that's what it's felt like the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. And for the first time, this feels like Dennis Allen stepping up and taking charge a little bit. Now, will that result in more wins? Will that result in going back to the playoffs? We shall see. But I do believe that Dennis feels whether the organization, whether the front office has made it clear to him or not, we'll never know. But at least Dennis seems to feel that, okay, I got my quarterback, I got my offensive staff, I have control of my draft, I have my defensive staff. If this doesn't work, man, there's only one person left when this all started, and that's me. And like I said, that tends to harden your edges a little bit.
And it's unfortunate because this is not a very talented Saints team. This is not the 2017 Saints. This is not the 2018 Saints. This is more of 2007, 2008 Saints. They need some more pieces.
Yeah.
And that's why I want to say 2007, because 2006, that was not a very talented team that got to the NFC Championship game, but it got there because of a lot of good breaks, they were very fortunate with injuries, and just people just low expectations about the team. So come 2007, when that same basic team tried to duplicate what it did, it had a meltdown and it kind of fell apart. Not to the Jim Haslett level of meltdowns, but Brees started out 1 touchdown, 7 interceptions. He had a couple of injuries. He had some stuff that went wrong, and it felt like almost like, not that they got exposed, but there was just some issues with that team that needed to be addressed. And he started addressing. We need a better middle linebacker. This middle linebacker isn't going to cut it. I need better defensive tackles. I got great career years out of these guys, but I need more talented defensive tackles. I need to get better on the offensive line. And they started making these moves. So 2007, 2008, 7-9, 8-8 seasons, I need a new defensive coordinator because this defense, I love the coach I brought over with me, but it's not aggressive enough. I need somebody who's going to get this team to be more aggressive. That's when they suddenly made the Super Bowl run. All these pieces suddenly all started fitting together. And I think what Allen is unfortunately dealing with is this is the beginning. These last 2 years was more or less trying to win with the pieces that are still left in the 2017 draft class. And you're just thinking, okay, if I get a better quarterback, if I get younger on the offensive line, I get another weapon at receiver, I should start doing better. I should win more games. And it didn't really happen that way. So now the Saints are going, okay, it's time to start over. And we're going to treat this like 2014. And we're going to think we're going to be in a 2014-2016 window, slowly trying to stay competitive, but slowly start trying to turn this team around and start winning. But we're not going to make a run. And I think that's the hard part for a lot of Saints fans is they look at this going, look, either shit or get off the pot kind of thing. If you're going to rebuild, do the rebuild we expect, tank, get top 10 picks, blow up the roster, get younger, fire the coach, fire the GM, all that stuff. And the Saints are like, no, we're not doing it that way. We're going to do it where we're still competitive. We're picking in the middle of the draft around 15 or 20, but we're going to make the moves to get the right kind of players in here. And I think that's the hard part for a lot of fans to deal with because it feels like, well, we're never going to get that top quarterback because we're never going to be in that position to draft a C.J. Stroud. We're not going to be in a position to get Bijan Robinson. We're not going to be in a position to get, you name the player. So you're kind of in that no man's land, but the Saints like that. because they feel like it's not, and I've always said this, it's not about where you draft, it's who you draft.
Yep.
Ryan Ramczyk, who, just he's basically going to call it a career. He's not playing this year. He's just staying on the roster so the Saints don't have to eat his salary. But he was picked, 28th? And he is arguably,
I think he was 31st or 32nd. I think that was the pick.
Even better.
Yeah.
And he is arguably the top 5 members of the top 5 offensive linemen in franchise history. So again, it's Michael Thomas until he started getting hurt. 2nd round pick, not a 1st round pick, a 2nd round pick.
Mm-hmm.
And he was on his way to being the all-time leading receiver before the injuries came in. But the all-time leading receiver was a 7th round pick.
Mm-hmm.
So you might find a guy who is going to be your next franchise guy and not be a top 5 pick. So, I'm putting that out there only because tanking doesn't do you any good unless you hit on the drafts the next year like you did in 2000. You have to have, or in 2017, you have to have those unbelievable draft classes. And it's just a question of who you pick. So that in mind, Spencer Rattler. Let's talk about him some more. He's had an opportunity to really show something because of Hayner's, skin cancer on his face. It's not. I mean, it's a dangerous form of skin cancer he has, but it's not. He doesn't have to quit football because of it.
Right.
It's if left untreated, it could be life threatening, but it's not life threatening yet. So he's taking advantage of the opportunities. And Allen's out there pretty much saying there's a battle to see who's going to be number 2. And he also implied that maybe our number 2 guy isn't on the roster right now, too, just to throw that out there. So my question to you is, number 1, who do you think is going to be the number 2 guy? And number 2, is that number 2 guy on this roster?
I'll answer the second part of the question first, whether the number 2 guy is on the roster. I don't think any of us know that, including Dennis Allen and Clint Kubiak. I think we'll have a better idea after the 49ers scrimmages. And I say it, and I could go either way on this. I like Jake Hayner at Fresno State. Made no secret of that. I love Spencer Rattler's confidence. I love his arm talent. But there's many reasons why he was a 5th round pick. It wasn't a fluke. I'm not gonna jump on the Rattler train even a tiny bit. I'm not even gonna buy a ticket to watch it go by until I see whether Spencer Rattler can do the things that he's been doing in practice with legitimate pressure in his face, and when he legitimately has to read a defense. 2 of the major reasons why he was a 5th round pick. But I mean, I acknowledge that Hayner and Rattler are in a battle for the number 2 job. I expected the Saints to pick up a veteran with successful starting experience, not just a Nathan Peterman. But I actually think it's a little bit telling that New Orleans released Peterman over the weekend, because that tells me that both Rattler and Hayner have shown the coaches enough that, okay, if we, and like I defer back to what I said towards the beginning of the show, but these coaches are having these roster conversations literally every single day, multiple times a day, probably. And one of the conversations that have been taking place are, if we had to go into the season tomorrow, Clint Kubiak, do you feel comfortable going to either Jake Hayner or Spencer Rattler if Derek Carr were to miss some time, either during a game or multiple games? Obviously, the temporary answer is yes, because that's why they released Peterman. Now, I remind you all that there is a guy that plays multiple positions that has had some successful starts at quarterback wearing number 7, if as an absolute emergency fallback option. But if neither Haener or Rattler, if either Haener or Rattler play poorly, especially if both of them play poorly against the Cardinals and against the 49ers, at that point, I think you're going to see the Saints scramble to bring in a veteran guy. And I'm not sure who else is out there. It could be even bringing back Peterman. You never know.
Ryan Tannehill is probably the biggest name that's out there.
Probably. But I mean, yeah, at least in a guy like Peterman, he's had a part of an off season in the system. So, the famous dying words, he knows the system, would come into play. At this point, you got to believe that Spencer Rattler is the early favorite to be the number 2 guy, but still a lot of football to be played at this position. And again, I'm not even going to watch this Rattler hype train go by until I see him actually read a defense with different color helmets that are trying to pressure him, and him still making those crisp throws that we've been seeing in practice.
Yeah, the hard part about watching practice is they're running pretty basic routes, a lot of rail routes, a lot of routes along the sideline kind of thing, where he gets to show off the arm.
Mm-hmm.
Putting a drive together, executing that drive, making the right decisions with the football, just doing all those things that a quarterback needs to be able to do on a play-by-play basis. I think that Rattler is further behind than Haener. Not because Haener's got an advantage of the system, but Haener just has had that year of this is how you prepare every week. This is
right.
What you got to look for. So I think that I think the number 2, number 3 job is between those 2 guys right now. I think if Carr were to get hurt, significant injury, where he would miss time, they would go out and go get a Ryan Tannehill, go get Joe Flacco off the couch, kind of thing. But I think right now they want to go with those 2 guys and see what they got. And if at worst you go get Taysom Hill and let him take some snaps at quarterback, because you're doing so many other things with him. I think they feel like we're going to probably lose something that we want to do by just limiting him to quarterback. So I think that the position battle is going to be fun to watch in preseason. It'll make people want to stick around and watch the 3rd and 4th quarter of games. I think that 3rd preseason game is going to be the game where whoever starts that game is probably got the leg up on the number 2 slot. And that's the kind of thing you want to watch. I've left this question up here. John's asking, are we surprised Mike Thomas is still available? Yeah, I mean, no, I shouldn't say surprised. I should say mildly amused. Only because you can't talk shit on Twitter and expect coaches to go, yeah, that's because he's talking about Dennis Allen. It's a fraternity, guys, and they protect their fraternity brothers. They don't take kindly to that kind of stuff. And I think that he's kind of holding out for the right team to pick him up. Kansas City, Miami, someone like that. And those teams aren't calling him.
Yeah.
The teams that probably are calling him, he's not interested in playing for. It's being called slant boy. And I think his injury history, honestly, trashing a quarterback and saying he threw a bad ball and that's why you got hurt. Yeah, but I've seen a lot of quarterbacks throw bad balls and it didn't end people's seasons.
Yeah.
I think those kind of things are haunting him more than him not wanting to play for a loser team. he's hoping the Eagles call him. But, you know, I thought he would probably start making the rounds, and the fact that he's not really tells me that a lot of teams are looking at him as damaged goods, old damaged goods, with a slice of drama, and that's hurting him right now. And I see you shaking your head. You pretty much thinking the same thing?
Almost across the board, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, not only are you talking about a player being critical, but a player being critical, highly critical, and in a knifing way about the quarterback. That's an entity that's deeply protected, like a CIA secret, with almost every NFL team. You just, like you said, Alan, you don't do that. And that automatically, if I have a young quarterback, with, I'm not going to say shaky confidence, but confidence that could be torpedoed a little bit easier, like any of the rookies or second-year quarterbacks, or even like a Jalen Hurts who is coming off an off year. I don't want a Michael Thomas. Same thing. It's the same kind of thing that happened to Terrell Owens later in his career, after he torched Donovan McNabb. Not too many teams touched him after that, and the ones that did would bring him in had, for the most part, garbage quarterbacks. And I think that's the corner that Michael Thomas has now painted himself into. Do you think of Josh Allen or a Tua, another guy with like wavery confidence, or a Patrick Mahomes? Do you think they want any parts of Michael Thomas? Hell no.
Yeah.
First of all, Mahomes and Andy Reid are saying, we won the Super Bowl. Look at the wide receivers that we won the last 2 Super Bowls with. We don't need Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas needs us. And again, you look throughout the league, Buffalo, who still has a very shaky receiving core. To our knowledge, they've not reached out to Michael Thomas at all. Miami is bringing in, other aging receivers, as wide receiver depth. At this point, if Michael Thomas plays this season, one of two things are going to need to happen. Either he has got to accept the fact that he might have to play a year or two with an Arizona Cardinal, or another Dragus is a Washington Commander, a team like that. Either that, or, and this is probably what's happening in Michael Thomas's mind, keeping your fingers crossed that one of these other teams, contenders, have a top receiver go down with a freak injury. One of those two scenarios are the only ways that you're going to see Michael Thomas play in 2024.
At this point, I think he's hoping for Dallas.
I think so too.
He's hoping that Jerry Jones calls him up and he has an opportunity to go play with the Cowboys. It's a high-profile team. It's got a good quarterback. He knows that offense because it's the West Coast offense because it's Mike McCarthy. And he can be the complimentary receiver in his mind, the complimentary receiver to CeeDee Lamb. So I think that's where he's looking to go. And Dallas hasn't signed anybody. Dallas hasn't made any offers or anything like that. And that's where he wants to go. He wants to go to a team like that.
Yeah.
I don't think he wants to go to an Atlanta or a Carolina or Tampa, because it's not about revenge against the Saints. Oh, yeah, he would like to do that. But it's more about, at my point in my career, I want to have that playoff win. I want to have a shot at the ring, and I want to play for a team like that that's got a good shot at winning a ring. And if I can be the guy to get them over the top, so be it. And that's why I think a team like Dallas that's going all in, or so they say. They always say. I mean,
right.
Here's the thing. With the Cowboys, and my dad thinks I'm crazy because I've been watching a lot of. I told you this last or 2 weeks ago. We've been watching a lot of '70s playoff games, okay, that are available on YouTube, and I'm watching a lot of Dallas games. And it's funny, you're watching these things, and just the way those Cowboys carried themselves versus the way this team or these teams from Dallas carry themselves now. I mean, those Cowboy teams, even though they won a Super Bowl in '71, even though they won a Super Bowl in '77, still played like they had something to prove.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas these Dallas teams play like we're the Cowboys. Don't you know you're supposed to lay down for us? We just show up and you guys are supposed to roll over. And it's the leadership of Roger Staubach, the leadership of that defense. It's like night and day. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
But Thomas and his drama, that'd be a perfect home for him.
Yeah.
Because there's no drama in Dallas. And Dwayne Thomas passed away the other day. Dallas Cowboys Dallas Cowboys running back who won their first Super Bowl in '71, Super Bowl VI, that was played here in New Orleans at Old Tulane Stadium. I watched America's Game, the story of the '71 Cowboys, and he said, if you look at every year that Dallas won a Super Bowl, there was always drama. '71 with Dwayne Thomas not talking to people, there's drama there. '77 with Hollywood Henderson and his cocaine problems and him, causing the troubles he had. And I don't think that's the year that Clint Longley took a sucker punch at Roger Staubach. I think that was '76 or '75.
I think you're right.
Because it was '74 was the year of the Thanksgiving game,
mm-hmm.
where he came in on Thanksgiving Day. But Hollywood Henderson, and he said then in the '90s, Jimmy Johnson versus Jerry Jones, and that drama, including Emmitt Smith holding out those first couple of games that one year. So there was always drama. So, but it seems like they get all the drama, but they don't win Super Bowls now.
Yeah.
They don't even advance the playoffs. I actually enjoy watching how they figure out how to lose this game. That's more enjoyable to me. That and seeing Scooter Magruder react to those games.
Right.
Those things are classics. The other thing I wanted to talk about, the last thing I want to talk about tonight, I agree with you, Calvin. We were just saying this earlier before you came on. This team does seem different from the past couple of years. They seem, I don't want to say hungrier, but they seem excited. They seem more focused than previous teams. So, I think this team has a good shot of surprising some people.
Mm-hmm.
They have to overcome their lack of talent with good football play. But, yeah, I agree with you. But I wanted to talk about this real quick. I don't know if you know who this is. Do you know who Ed Daniels is?
I know who he is. I've not had any personal or professional dealings with Ed Daniels, but yeah, I know who he is.
Okay, so he came from ABC, and then they switched to WGNO, became the Fox affiliate, and WGNO became the ABC affiliate. Channel 8 New Orleans became the Fox affiliate. So Ed Daniels went over, stayed with WGNO, left Channel 8, went to WGNO, became their sports director. Well, in the '90s, before the interwebs and all this stuff, podcasts and everything else, he used to host a show called Saint Sideline. And that was a show that would talk about what we talk about every week. It was draft classes, the mini camps, the breakdowns after regular games during the football season, because the Jim Morris show was probably the last coaches show they ever did, because it was never a Sean Payton coaches show on television, and the Jim Morris show was and there was never a Mike Ditka coaches show. That kind of stuff all kind of went away in the '90s. So that was really your Saints fix, other than the post games, fourth down on 4, all this the Sunday night broadcasts that the local networks did. Ed Daniels' wife came in the hotel room, I think, and he was non-responsive. He had a major heart attack. Gayle Benson, in fact, flew him back to New Orleans for treatment. They found out it was a heart attack, and he is in recovery, but I don't know what his condition is. I don't know if he'll be able to do sportscasting again, but he's a man that's been in the New Orleans Saints and New Orleans sports scene for over 40 years, going back to the 80s. And this behind me, in fact, has been a Channel 4 broadcast by the 87 Saints, the first playoff team. But yeah, basically, Gayle Benson's taking care of him, doing all the right things to get him back healthy because of the respect she's had for this man. And a lot of local sports reporters are like, this was a class act. This is a guy that, the old guard is disappearing. A lot of the old Saints reporters who have been there since the beginning, most of the guys from when I was a kid, Pete Finney, those people, they're long gone. So Ed Daniels is one of the last ones from that era. Jim Henderson's retired.
Mm-hmm.
So, shout out to Gayle for taking care of Ed. Shout out to Ed. Man, I hope you come back better than ever.
Mm-hmm.
I hope you recover from this and get back to sports reporting. But I just want to take time to mention that because Saints fans kind of view the media as part of the team almost, especially when it comes to reporters. You see this even now with Nick Underhill, where fans have just kind of latched on to Nick as like the authority now in Saints football. I know, but it's true. I mean, they look at, that's our cheerleader, that's our guy, that's the guy we want out there asking the tough questions that we can't ask because we're not there.
Right.
And that's how they look at sports reporters. Whereas in most cities, people have a very hostile relationship with sports reporters. They don't like the reporters. They don't like the coaches either, but they don't like the reporters.
Right.
So that's just one more thing that makes New Orleans unique. Since you were gone for Bayou Blitz, what's going to be on the Bayou Blitz Wednesday? Or are y'all going to have Bayou Blitz? Because I know it's getting closer to D-Day. Oh, and happy belated birthday and anniversary.
Thank you.
Both of them back to back.
Thank you. Yeah, I do that on purpose so that way when my memory starts to go, I can remember like everything within a couple of day time span, and we always try to coincide our vacation with it too. But no, I appreciate the wishings and all you guys that tune in for Under the Dome and Bayou Blitz. A lot of you follow me personally too, and have reached out for the anniversary, vacation wishes, birthday wishes. Thank you. All that. I don't like to acknowledge the birthday, but I appreciate the sentiment. And yeah, we had such lousy reception at the beach. And I'm not going to complain about it because I'd already made my decision. I was going to write very little. And I still planned on doing Jordy's show, which we had to do by phone, and still planned on doing Bayou Blitz. And I didn't have the reception to do either one, either one. So yeah, tomorrow night's Bayou Blitz is probably going to be a lot what you and I did tonight, just get caught up on what we would have talked about last week, and kind of crunch it into our Cardinals preview, what we're going to be looking for, both from a unit and individuals. Just pregame stuff. It actually feels good. I know the game doesn't count, but in a way, I actually prefer to do a preseason pregame over a regular season pregame, because you have so much more to talk about. What are you looking for? Rather than what's this team need to do to bounce back, or what's this team need to do to keep it rolling, whatever the case may be. Now we can nitpick a little bit more. You and I can, and me and Brendan can, for preseason games, and to that aspect of preseason makes it more fun to me.
Absolutely. I look forward to preseason. I remember that it's not real football about 3 plays in.
Right.
But I do look forward to preseason. I enjoy looking at some of the guys that, feel-good stories. I always tell this story. The 1986 Saints. I can remember the first time I saw Ruben Mays, and I'm going, who the hell is that? Number 36 running like that. I watch. I'd like to. But yeah, there's guys that you see in preseason that you just go, man, that's something special right there. I'm like, Michael Thomas, when he in that Patriots game.
Yeah.
I watched him catch that football. I'm going, this is somebody who's significant. This is somebody who's going to make an impact in this team. This is not just a receiver going, oh yeah, okay. I've seen these guys before come through. This is another Lonzo Hill, another guy like that. No, this is something serious. So, I can think of those preseason games that I had seen in the past. And I don't know about you. I kind of like, I kind of like seeing preseason games on Saturday because, I like football, my football Sundays. I like those kind of things. But at the same time, when we lose, I'm pissed off. I don't want to look at highlights. I don't look at anything. So I'm carrying that over to work on Monday because I know that's what they're going to talk about on Monday. First thing, and I'm like, man, it's Monday. It's going to be a pain in the ass day anyway. You're going to piss me off more by reliving this thing. Or when they win, now I'm staying up to midnight watching highlight shows and stuff because I want to see all the highlights. Even though I watch the whole game, I want to see the highlights. Like, remember NFL primetime when it was really good in the 90s and in the 80s?
Yeah.
I'd watch it at 6, okay, or 5, whenever it came on, before Sunday Night Football.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd watch Sunday Night Football game. Now I'm watching NFL primetime again, but this time I know where the Saints are coming in, so I make sure and watch that part.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So I got to go to work in the morning, and my ass got to be up at 6:15 in the morning, but I didn't go to sleep till 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm watching all these highlight shows, and ESPN used to show NFL films after prime time.
Yes.
So I'd stay up and watch that crap too.
Yes.
So yeah, now I'm really like, oh, Monday, oh my God, I can't make this, So yeah, I mean that was the tough part. But yeah, oh yeah, I wish I still had it. It's on my old computer. Old Saints Report guy wrote the stages a Saints fan goes through from the end of the Saints game on Sunday to the following week. And it is the funniest thing I'd ever read in my life about how the change comes. How Sunday after a loss, you were petitioning the NFL to demolish the dome. You were writing the FCC for showing obscenities on television, calling it highlights, and that kind of. And then by Thursday, you're calling up a cable access channel about home improvement, talking about how can the media so down on our Saints all the time. It's a classic because it's like every Saints fan's ever lived this. And I saved it a long time ago, and it's on that old computer. I've never been able to recover it, but I'd love to because it's something worth framing. It was that good, that funny. You Saturday night, you can't wait. You're as excited as the players because this is the turning point in our season. We're going to turn it around this week. We're going to start the winning streak now. Then you start the cycle over again. So it was a lot of fun. But well, Bob, thanks for sticking with me. I can see you fading on me already.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, I'm keeping you way too long because we're doing basically 2 shows in one since we didn't
Right.
do one last week. Check out the Bayou Blitz tomorrow night. Bob, again, happy belated birthday, happy anniversary. I know I told you that on the
Thank
actual days, but
Thank
everybody needs to take care of you like that. And we'll see you next time when Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.
At all.